My father's from Mexico and I'm white passing Latina, but like mental health is so stigmatized in Latin culture.
It is.
Like I always hated that because I was like, all of these like really abusive behaviors are just being swept under the rug. And so that was also like, okay, I want to learn. I want to learn about therapy. I want to learn about mental health and I want to destigmatize it.
I am Jocelyn Miller, and this is Last Client of the Day, presented by Boulevard. We are so excited to introduce our next guest, Sandra Shahrokh. Sandra is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice in Los Angeles, California. She works with teens and adults dealing with childhood trauma, perfectionism, anxiety, and substance addiction. Sandra's multicultural background as a Latina and child of an immigrant informs her sensitivity to culture influences on relationships and family dynamics. Sandra holds a master's degree in clinical psychology from Antioch University, specializing in spiritual and depth psychology.
This episode is brought to you by Boulevard, the modern, easy-to-use client experience platform that delivers everything you need to streamline your business, empower your staff, and amaze your clients. Listeners can save 10% for tuning into this episode. To learn more, go to joinblvd.com/podcast. Boulevard, make every moment matter.
In today's episode, we'll be talking about mental health and what that looks like for owners, managers, for their team, and of course, their business. We have our lovely Sandra Shahrokh, our licensed marriage and family therapist. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
We're so excited that you're here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
And I'm so happy to be here. I think this topic is so needed in the industry, and I hope that I can share a little bit about mental health and how to kind of incorporate it into your world. And I'm excited.
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited for you as well. So yeah, before we dive into, that really important topic, let's talk about you first. I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you actually got into therapy.
Yeah. So I'm Sandra Shahrokh. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I have a private practice in Los Angeles. And I work with people who are struggling with childhood trauma, who may not even realize that they're struggling with childhood trauma. They like grew up maybe in an alcoholic home or a parent with like untreated mental health issues. And so they were often parentified. That's like my passion, getting to like witness people's stories, right? People's stories about where they've come from, how that's affected them, where they want to move towards in life, and getting to support them in their goals. I also love working with people who are exploring their relationship to drugs and alcohol. So maybe they don't want to get sober, but they're just curious about that.
What that looks like,
Yeah. I know you asked me like why I became a therapist. Yeah. And there's so many reasons. I feel like that's such a hard question. I think it's like I wanted to be the person that I wish I had when I was younger. I think I wanted to be able to, again, hear people's stories if they were neglected and maybe never had anyone like listen to them or help them or support them.
Right.
So that's one of the main reasons. Also, I'm from a family, my father's from Mexico and I'm white passing Latina, but like mental health is so stigmatized in Latin culture.
It is. We were actually just discussing this. Yes, it is.
And I know you were kind of saying that too.
Exactly. In the Black culture, it's different, and it's something that a lot of people don't talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was always like, I always hated that because I was like, why are we sweeping everything under the rug? We're not talking about anything. All of these like really abusive behaviors are just being swept under the rug. And so that was also like, okay, I want to learn. I want to learn about therapy. I want to learn about mental health, and I want to destigmatize it.
Absolutely.
I want to break those barriers that are impacting people from not getting help.
I love that. And that's a perfect reason to get into the field. Helping one person at a time is definitely was needed. So I completely get that. So, okay, I love it. So let's dive into the first question, actually, or the next question. Why do you think more people are actually starting to research and get into therapy and starting to find therapists, you know, to help them with their day-to-days and just maneuvering around life right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID was a big reason.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember COVID?
Yes, you had to pretty much sit with yourself and be like, okay, this is me.
Yeah.
Like, or you were with other people, you know, and realizing that the time, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, just sitting, like, it was so isolating for people. I think people were really confronted with their own mental health issues. It was glaring, right? Like, you couldn't deny being stuck in your house, safe in the house, and seeing your relationships and seeing your own mental health. You couldn't hide from it during COVID. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people acknowledge some anxiety, depression, maybe unhealthy relationships to drugs and alcohol. And so people started seeking out help during that time. I think that started it. I mean, people were already seeking help before then.
Yeah. But there was a
need.
Exactly.
A real need just to like be with someone.
Exactly.
It was so nice during COVID. It was terrifying, but like getting to be able to support people through that time was so sacred. I also think Instagram, TikTok, social media is helping to destigmatize mental health. Because I think therapists are showing up as themselves. I think there's been a misconception that therapy, like you go see someone and they're just like, and kind of this blank slate.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if you ever had that conception of therapy or what your conception of therapy was.
It was the actual opposite, to be honest, where they overspoke and I was like, you know what? I need someone different.
Okay. So that can happen too.
Yes.
But I think people are feeling comfortable going on Instagram, going on TikTok, seeing therapists and being like, oh, that person's speaking to me. I want to see that person.
Like I resonate with them.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's what you do also on your social media. You have different, which I love. You have different stories where you're like, oh yeah, this is actually something that I'm dealing with right now. So I get that.
So social media, I think, has been a huge proponent for people to reach out for services.
Yes.
And I also think like people want change, you know, not just change as a society and in their communities, but change internally. People want to change within themselves. And I think that's being talked about more, right?
Absolutely.
Like growth, like how can we help you grow? And it's not just therapists doing that, right? And this is why again, another reason I'm so excited to be here is like Boulevard wanting to do that.
Exactly. I think it's so important that we, bring that type of awareness because it's something that everyone deals with no matter what field you're in, but specifically this field, we definitely see it a lot where it's needed and it needs to be talked about more. So I agree with you.
Even if, people still feel weird about going to therapy, it's like, what are companies doing? What can companies do to just start the conversation around mental health, right?
Exactly.
Mental health, taking care of yourself doesn't have to be therapy where you go see someone one-on-one.
Right.
It can be so many things. And I really want people to get that, right? I don't want therapy or even this conversation around therapy to turn people off. But really, it's just like we're talking about mental health here and how to take care of yourself.
Exactly. Exactly.
And whatever works for you, right?
I love it.
Therapy works for me. Like I love therapy.
It
works for you too? Okay.
Absolutely same. I don't know where I would be without it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm so happy to hear that. And some people have done it and don't want to do it again. And
exactly.
So I'm happy that we're just starting this conversation on how to support your industry.
So when you think about businesses, let's say owners, what do you think about them prioritizing it? Let's talk a little bit more about that, prioritizing it within their business and how that looks for not only, the service providers and the team that they're working with, but also for the clients that come in. How do you think it is like prioritizing, that portion of their job? Because there's tons of things, going on within these businesses. But I do think that mental health is very important. So what do you think about that?
It was interesting because I was like, I've been really thinking about this topic and I got my hair done on Thursday for my birthday.
You look gorgeous.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
And I have like curly hair. And so the woman I go to specializes in curly hair. And
yes.
she sees a lot of women with curly hair. And I was kind of asking her, like, what she feels like she needs as a hairstylist, like what supports she needs. And she brought up something really beautiful of like, hair is so vulnerable. Like,
yes.
Makeup, hair, skin, like aesthetic spas, like people are really going to you in like their most vulnerable states.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with that.
I think being able to know what to do as a stylist or an artist or a business owner and being able to support your clients with this vulnerability, but also your employees, right?
Yes, big time.
Like, I think it comes with just acknowledging the work we do is very vulnerable, and we're going to hear a lot of stories from our clients. Just acknowledging that is part of the job.
Right. I know you usually hear people say, I'm going to my hairstylist, but I'm also going to my therapist.
Yeah. Right? That's a big deal. Right. And I was talking to my hairstylist and she was like, there's so much trauma related to hair. And so I hear all of that. And sometimes I don't know what to do or say.
Right.
I'm just sitting with this person's like pain and trauma about how a parent cut off their hair or how, you know, they're mixed race and they always like hated their curls or their curls weren't accepted by someone. And so, and then I was like, I just kept thinking like, oh my God, you're not trained. Like, to hold that,
to support that, or even like how do you reply to that?
Yeah,
that is so true. So I mean, kind of bouncing on that, I would love to know, are there programs or different things that you would suggest that are out there to help train, you know, service providers or stylists or colorists that are needing to understand, like, how do you reply to something like that? Because maybe they're not necessarily going through therapy and know how, you know, to approach that. So are there any things that are out there that owners could recommend to their service providers?
Yeah, I think there are companies, I'm blanking on the name of two of them, but I know there's a Black psychologist who started a company. She was like an owner of a hair salon and she's starting to train people.
Nice. Okay.
But I also think, kind of going back to your question, that this is something for business owners to think about. Like, can you do a monthly training where it's either you or you're bringing someone in, whether that's a therapist or a communication specialist, to just be able to support your employees around, hey, we get clients who are dealing with a lot. They're going to tell us our stories. Here are ways you can respond.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And you don't have to do this. Do whatever you feel comfortable with. But how do we actively listen? How do we communicate in a way that's validating our clients, but also not trying to fix it for them or
because they're not, you know, licensed to, but giving that recommendation of even like where to go next, you know, or how to approach. Yes.
Yeah. Like having a resource packet in your company. Like here are some services you can recommend if they're open to it. Or if you feel comfortable even sharing, hey, I'm in therapy. Have you ever thought about it?
Exactly.
Like sharing your experience.
And if they even say, you know, I'm not into it, maybe having suggestions on like why it's important or what they've, you know, gone through and how it's helped them. I agree with that.
And I think that's like at the really deep level, but I also think it just like the basic foundational level. How are you as a business owner modeling self-care to your employees?
Exactly.
Because we can talk about self-care all day. Even as a therapist, I can go tell my client, go do this, go do yoga, go dance. But like, what am I doing, right?
Right.
Am I showing up to go see my clients when I'm stressed out, burned out? Or am I modeling to them, hey, you deserve the best of me? I'm like taking today off, right?
Right.
And I think we're so...
Therapists need therapy.
Yes,
I believe
exactly. It has to start from the top, right? What are business owners doing to model it's okay to take time for yourself?
Right.
Because we can say it's okay to take time, but are business owners taking time for themselves?
Right. Exactly.
Are they like going out and taking care of themselves? Are you noticing when you're burned out? Do you know what burnout is?
Exactly.
And I think at the foundational level, it's like, what is burnout? How do you know when you're burned out? How are you modeling how to take care of yourself when you're burned out?
And then from there, passing that on to their team.
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't know. Like, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it's very important to know self-awareness because especially if you're, you know, leading a team, You have to have that self-awareness to understand if you're burnt out, because they may notice it, you not notice it. So you need that, So I do believe it's very important, not just to start with, the service providers and the team, but also to make sure it's trickling down and starting off with them so that they can be giving, the best support that they can. I believe that.
Having these conversations, even if no one is saying anything, because oftentimes people, and especially the clients I work with who grew up with a lot of trauma, they're so good at holding everything inside. I'm good. I got this. I can see 5. I mean, how many clients were you seeing a day?
I wasn't a service provider.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But for massage therapists, you'll have, I don't know, it could be anywhere from 5 to 10.
Yeah. So they're like, no, I got this. I could see 5 to 10 clients a day. I'm fine. But then they're going home and they're just like, feeling it, burned out, feeling it. But then they go to work with a smile on their face. Exactly. No one knows that they're struggling.
Yeah.
So I think, again, at a foundational level, just do something monthly anyway.
Exactly.
Even if no one's asking for it or saying anything.
Yes.
It's like, hey, we're going to have this conversation because it's important and necessary.
Right.
And even if you don't think you're burned out and you think you can handle this, which you probably can.
Talk about it. Right.
It still might be harming you. It still might be increasing anxiety. It still might be making you depressed. So let's have these conversations just in case.
Right. Just so you can notice it if it does get to that point.
Yeah.
I love that.
This episode is brought to you by Boulevard, the first and only client experience platform purpose-built for appointment-based self-care businesses. Today's listeners can save 10%. To claim your special offer, head over to joinboulevard.com/podcast. That's joinblvd.com/podcast.
So let's talk about who benefits from therapy.
I know we've kind of been talking about service providers. And service providers, I think, can benefit from therapy, but also managers as well as business owners of these companies. And I think there's a lot that goes into it. So there's the service providers on the floor, right, with the clients, kind of direct client care, holding all of that. And then the managers whose clients are probably like the employees in a sense, right?
Exactly.
Like managing all of the employees.
So. Yes.
So that brings an additional stress, right? How do I show up for my employees when I'm carrying all this stress, right? Who does the manager have to go to?
Exactly.
With all of that. And so therapy really is a space where you can bring your stress, your worries, your anxieties, and you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
Getting support, right? And then owners of the company who might be worried about the business structure. But what we know about stress is that when we hold on to stress, we get more sick. It affects our body. It affects outside of work, right?
Absolutely.
We're showing up a certain way at work, right? We have to be a certain way to some degree.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Right? I also really think there's this idea, and we were kind of talking about it downstairs earlier, of like, getting to be your authentic self at work. And I think therapy can really help you acknowledge what's authentic and what's not, right?
Absolutely.
Who am I authentically? Who am I because I feel like I have to be? Absolutely. And like really looking at that. So you can show up to work authentically. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe you are having a bad day. And is that okay? Yes.
Yes. No one is going to be at 100% every day.
Yes.
So,
no one should be.
Exactly.
So therapy can really help you understand what negative beliefs are you carrying and how to kind of shift that perspective, right? How can I show up to work as a manager and give 80% and still feel good enough, right? How do I take a day off to be with my family, to be with my friends? Because that's important too.
Absolutely.
If we're carrying everything at work and we're carrying that inside of our body, not getting support, not talking about it, we're going to get sick. Your relationships outside of work are going to shift, right? You might be more reactive. You might be more angry, anxious. And people are going to be like, what's going on with you?
Right. I think the support system's really important also. Like, I know owners are looked at as, that top person that it should trickle down to, but I think it should also be the opposite way. What do you think about that? Like the service providers being able to see, you know, and tell if the owner needs that extra support because they might not be at that 100% or 80%. Let's say they're at 50% that day.
Yeah.
Being able to tell, like, okay, maybe my owner needs a little bit more support is important. I love that. Also. Yeah.
Like, exactly what you're saying. It's a community at work.
Exactly.
Right. And I think there's been these like hierarchies of like, okay, the owner's going through something, but we can't talk about it.
Right.
So how can we create cultures and communities around talking about things?
Exactly.
And kind of going back to like where we started about like Black cultures, Latin cultures, not talking about things.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Like, let's not create our family dynamics at work.
Exactly.
Let's create something different.
Exactly. Let's break that, stigma that's out there. Exactly.
So I love that you brought that in there because I think it would be really powerful for a service provider to go up to an owner and just be like, hey, checking in. Like,
right.
Is there anything I can support you with?
Exactly.
And the owner being able to be vulnerable, right? That modeling.
That is such a big part of being an owner and manager. I do believe, or a leader just in general, you know?
Yeah.
You have to be able to be open and vulnerable. I do think it's respected, a lot more.
Yeah.
Than the opposite of that,
And I think boundaries are on that too. Like you don't want to like
give too much.
Spill like your whole trauma narrative and story, and then like the person's like, I
don't know what to do with this.
Yeah. Like, okay, I wasn't asking for your family history, but I just wanted to see if I could support you. So I think navigating that too, and also like for the owners and managers, if you're feeling like a shift needs to be made in your company and you don't know where to start, hire someone.
Exactly.
Like, you don't need to know where to start. Like you don't need to figure it all out. You don't need to have all the answers.
Exactly.
And I think that's huge. A lot of managers and owners feel like they have to have all the answers a lot of the time.
Which no one does.
Yeah.
So use the support, that's out there.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
Use the support of your community and team. Be vulnerable. And if that's like, I don't know where to start, but I know something needs to change. Again, those amazing services. Like I know L'Oreal's doing something. What was the barbershop?
Yes, the Confess Project.
Yes. Like there's all these companies that are
there's programs
kind of starting
out there
to do that.
Exactly. So, yeah, use what's out there. We don't have to create it from the beginning, right? There's so much support that's out there already.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I do think though that like if things are not talked about, if people are just going to work, carrying it all, it's going to affect the business and the company.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit more. So tell me what that could look like if you don't, have these certain support systems in place and these programs that you're offering, whether it be for service providers, staff members, or for clients. What could that look like for a business that usually has people come with their problems and talks about their different issues that they're going through?
Well, I also think it's like about employee retention too. Employees are going to search for what they need, right? So there are companies offering training and mentorship around mental health and how to communicate around some of these topics that we talked about, right? When clients are coming in with so much stress and what to do with that. There are companies who are offering that. So it's also, I think employees could kind of start getting together if they're stressed and unhappy and feel like no one's listening to them or seeing them, right? I think people, and maybe this is just me, but I think people just want to be seen and heard.
Absolutely. That's
you, right?
That's with everything. Yeah, exactly.
It's not even like you don't have to fix it right now.
But you just need to talk it out.
Yeah.
It's literally like talking it out with your girls. Like, I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing, or am I crazy? Or
exactly. Like just validate that like I'm not crazy. Like I have a right to be stressed out about what's happening in our company. And I think people are pretty like generous with like, hey, I get it. Like you're figuring out how to support the company. You're figuring out what services we need.
Right.
But I think people like just want to be seen and heard. So if you're not, as an owner and a manager, if you're not seeing and hearing your employees, it's going to result in like, are you retaining them? Are people leaving?
Exactly.
Because of some of these things.
Exactly.
And it's not necessarily a reflection of you, right? It's just what can be done, right? So that can be a consequence of kind of not looking at the mental health aspect of the work that you all do. As well as like individually, I talked about this, but like what's going on with you is going to impact the people around you, whether you're aware of it or not. So that's it too. Like relationships are hard already.
They are,
so
yeah.
Showing up less stressed are going to make them better.
Exactly.
I also think, and I don't know if this has happened, but people who are unhappy often tend to find other people who are unhappy and then can kind of form like coalitions.
Right. It just gets bigger and bigger.
And bigger. And then there's this negative kind of environment that they don't really want to be in. No one wants to be in, right?
It sounds like social media and the comments.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, like reading all the negative comments on
like,
social media.
Gosh, okay.
Yeah, and you can kind of get sucked into that.
Right.
So it's also like, how do we create healthy work environments, which means seeing and hearing your employees. What do they have to say? What do they want? Also, again, going back to my original idea, just doing something, whether or not people are saying they need something.
Even if they don't think they need it.
Yeah.
Because it could open, that door to let them know. Maybe I do need to check in a little bit more with myself and kind of understand myself more. So yeah, I get that. I completely get that.
Yeah. And even like owners and managers are mentors. And like, I always remember the people who have mentored me in my life. Like that has always been so valuable and so important when they've like taken the time to just listen to me.
Yeah.
And so again, modeling, taking care of your mental health. It's okay. You don't have to do this alone, nor should you.
Exactly.
Nor should you carry
I love
the
that.
stress.
I love it.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it.
Before we end, I would love to ask this just to make sure we're asking all of our guests this. How do you define success? But how do you define it in a, personal and emotional state?
I used to think it was having all the things, right? I used to think it was like having the partner, having the child, having the car, having the home. And it is to some degree.
Part of it, yeah.
But more than all of that, it's loving myself, like learning how to love myself. Because when I'm okay with myself, I'm such a better human.
Yes.
And it took me a really, really long time to get that, like, I can still have all of the things and be so unhappy, right? And trying to fix other people.
Exactly.
If this person just acted this way, I'd be okay. If I just had this, right? If I just had this new shiny thing, I'd be okay. I'd feel better.
Right.
But
That's why people go shopping when they're feeling sad. And it's like only for that moment, it'll cast it for only that moment, but after that you're still having to deal with your inside and yourself.
Exactly.
So I completely feel that. Yeah.
And no, don't get me wrong, the shiny things are nice.
I mean, yeah,
like, that's important.
It's part of it, right?
Yeah, and I know it's like, it is cliche, but like I feel that on such a deep level. Like,
right.
It doesn't matter what I have. If I'm stressed out, not happy with myself, I'm just like not a nice human. And so really success to me is like waking up every morning, not in fear, but in like peace.
That's
right?
beautiful.
Yeah, that's success to me.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Sandra. Amazing understanding, for just owners in general and what they can do to help support their business and their team members. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, I have an Instagram.
Yeah.
That's where I recommend. And then I link my website and everything, but it's Therapy with Sandra.
Perfect.
And thank you so much for asking me to be here
Absolutely.
today.
We are so happy that you were able to join us.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much.